That's the way to earn a yield on Bitcoin. People are now slowly beginning to recognize the financial properties of the compute in Bitcoin. I hear the word Bitcoin bond and I see $1 involved. It's not. There's only one system that does that. With this system, we can exclude debt, but the most powerful part of this, for me, would be...
There's definitely a lot of people who would look to invest in something like that. Yield is a dirty word in Bitcoin for obvious reasons. You're generating economic value using Bitcoin. And so return on your Bitcoin using Bitcoin.
It's the only intrinsic yield.
Why are you reluctant to set up a company that gives a return on their Bitcoin? Why are you reluctant to do that?
Not reluctant to do it. There's a few dangerous things in that I won't talk about on camera.
Archie.
Jake Scanlon, you handsome bastard.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I'm a little bit run down this morning, but I'm sticking to my morning sunrise routine. Dr. Jack Cruz would be proud of me.
Yeah.
He's instilled that in me, but it feels like this morning I woke up at 6:30 and that was a sleep-in.
Sunrise?
Right? Yeah, sunrise. 6:30 a.m. and I'm waking up almost effortlessly before sunrise most mornings.
That's the dream.
And getting out there, you just in shorts, no top, no sandals, anything, and walking on the sand within like 2 minutes. And so that's a fantastic way to get started. But today I just felt a little off, so I did a little bit of running and a little bit of swimming, and that was it. Yeah.
Nice.
How do you get your morning started in El Salvador? Because you don't live in El Zonte.
No, there's a whole story. I'm on a farm in Berlin, as they refer to it here, as Berlin in El Salvador, which is a mountain town. And I'm luckily on the edge of the town where it drops down into coffee farm. So my mornings are watching the sun come up, the rivers in the distance, but just surrounded by trees everywhere, coconuts falling whilst they're $4 here. So it's just a completely different perspective on El Salvador, but also tied into that Bitcoin story, more from like the production side of seeing what Bitcoiners can do up there in the mountains. So every morning is obviously figuring out what to do. So I typically do some push-ups, just something to just sort of shock the body, hydrate, and then probably just walk up into town and go. The default for me is to just go into the Bitcoin education center that they have in town. And there's always a student or a new person that wants to learn something new. So I offer that information.
I want to talk a little bit more about Berlin in a moment, because it's not a place that I'd really heard of. And probably most people haven't heard in the Bitcoin space, haven't heard too much of. But there is a lot of Bitcoin going on there.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to the decision to move yourself to El Salvador.
Well, the family line all the way up to me was engineers, and always that mindset of building things, thinking into the future, things coming from nothing to something. And Bitcoin pretty much is early in that process as well. We're really going into the emergent properties of what tomorrow in Bitcoin world will look like. And so from studying engineering, I was figuring out, okay, what am I going to do next? So I went straight into Airbus, into a risk management position. And just the big, large corporate company wasn't for me. But at the same time, I was learning about Bitcoin, learning about the value of money, learning about all these other things. And unfortunately, went a little bit in the alternative asset route, but came back to Bitcoin. But what got me into visiting El Salvador was going into the deep end of the energy and mining side. And upon visiting here, it's mostly builders on the payments and spending side of things. But the key issues that I've noticed here and things that Bekele talks about are the food security side of things, energy security in the sense of my last visit here, especially to El Zonte, winter time in the sense of like lots of storms. So the grid went down. So I'm noticing all these different things of more food needs to be produced in this country, more energy needs to be produced. And Bitcoin mining is very much intertwined with all the different sort of things that they want to be built here. Bitcoiners from abroad like warm showers. There's all these other stories of Bitcoin beyond just payments, spending, wallets, nodes. The energy side of Bitcoin, I think, will amazingly progress this country. And we're in the early innings of that as well. So, yeah.
And so Berlin, how did that come to your attention? Is it called Berlin, just like the German city?
Yeah.
It is.
Very confused to the city in Europe. They have the accent to it, so they say Berlin. So with Berlin, I consider it the productive Bitcoiners, in the sense of there's a couple of other Bitcoiners scaling up quite handsomely a large coffee farm. And they want everything Bitcoin. They want salaries paid in Bitcoin. They want to sell their goods in Bitcoin. So other different areas that I'm interested in is how we get unit of account into things. But just by far and large, I see places down like at the beach as the sort of consumption side. People are spending, enjoying themselves. But up in the mountains, things are growing. So I'm trying to figure out even more as to how we connect these different worlds of production and consumption, and use Bitcoin as the money to move in the opposite direction of all these goods, services, systems, heating a building, a power system for off-grid ranching, for the beef initiative, as the different food security side of things. So there is a whole palette of exciting things that could be talked about, but it starts with the smaller system, which I want to build, which is, you could call it a student project. A couple of panels, run a Bitcoin miner, maybe heat some water, maybe dry some mangoes, but the smallest version of what's possible, and then it can go on a house, and then it can be heating an entire hotel, and that it just explodes into countless different options from there. But the other side of that is for me to teach these things, because there's some really excited students in Berlin, and all they need is just a little bit of sort of money on the donation side for the Bitcoin Center there, because they're doing so much with so little. And yeah, connect the different Bitcoin worlds here, get energy cheaper, get more Bitcoin in their hands. There's a whole palette of things, but we're just starting.
You mentioned the education aspect of your work and your aspirations. You do have a YouTube channel that's, it's a nice modest size, but it's certainly not insignificant. Yeah. It's very concentrated, and people, to have 10, 11,000 people following an account that's very niche, like you go
Mining
deep.
is a niche of a niche.
It's really niche, and you're doing quite well. So tell us a little bit about that. First of all, give people the details where they can find that channel on YouTube. What's it called?
Yeah, Hashpower Academy. And the premise of that is, if you go to a normal Bitcoin conference, they're all talking about finance and all the different utility of Bitcoin in the world of finance. If you go to a mining conference, they'll talk about energy. They'll talk about energy in every possible way you can think you can talk about energy. And these two worlds of energy and money, energy and finance, shall we say, they are the two biggest paradigms, but there is this third one, the technology side of Bitcoin, the compute. It's called hash power. When you want to measure all of the resource that's securing the Bitcoin network, it's the hash rate of all these computers deployed all around the world. Now, people are very much drilled right now of going, oh, Bitcoin's bad for the environment, it wastes energy, and this money thing. But all of the different topics of Bitcoin can all be taught and stitched together in a really clear order. And so that's essentially what the YouTube channel does, is I start with module 1, talking about energy. And module 6 is talking about Bitcoin last. And all the context of finance and financial history, all of that aspect is taught last. And the reason to do that is you literally follow the very process through 6 core areas of Bitcoin from the story of energy. I always say this in everything, which is, if you open a religious book or a scientific textbook, it all starts with bang, let there be light. So energy is always the most fundamental conversation behind anything, and it's the most fundamental thing that we need to attach back to what we use as money, and thus Bitcoin. And the education is developing all different discussion topics. Like the typical videos being posted is just discussing all far and wide subject areas. But on the website, there's just a free course to go through the whole story. But the key important thing of that is, once you've stitched the entire Bitcoin story together, then you can go down any rabbit hole, because you've got those fundamentals. And so I focus on the maths, I focus on the physics, but I make sure to give clear analogies for everything, analogies to the real world. And that's the sweet spot that the Academy has reached. It makes the technical stuff not boring to watch. It has to be engaging, otherwise people's ears just close up.
So who are you targeting with that? Because it sounds to me like, because you're not leading with the hook, which is the output, right? You're leading with an input. It sounds to me like you're looking to educate people who are already into Bitcoin about the benefits of Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
Have I got that right?
I teach them the benefits of Bitcoin mining, but that engages a learner to want to explore everything from how we produce energy, how we manage and balance it on the electric grid, to those computers, Bitcoin miners, draining it all into your wallet as Bitcoin. And because it's so many different subject areas, it has to just constantly be broken down. So all I really did was start with a question of, where is the best place to start with learning Bitcoin? And so I've really thought about, how can people learn about Bitcoin by reading something that will not change if they read it 100 or 1,000 years from now. And the reason for that is, will electricity be exchanged into compute, be exchanged into Bitcoin, and the inter-exchange between all three? That's never going to change, because if it did, it would break the system. So you got these fundamental concepts. And then I started going, well, okay, to learn about this, insert word here, without going into the detail, it's, well, you need to learn this. So really breaking anything down to its just basic concepts. And then all you do is you build a solid foundation, like anything. You build a solid foundation, and all the knowledge that you build on top doesn't have any knowledge gaps. Because most Bitcoin education goes financial history, today, a nominal amount of medium of exchange, and then they say, oh, in the future when we're on a Bitcoin standard. And that's what frustrates me. I'm thinking about, I don't know, how do we get onto a Bitcoin unit account? How do we measure goods and services, not by financial means, but through physical means? That is, how do I measure the cost to produce something? That we can measure in Bitcoin. Prices just keep people in this delusion of seeing half the iceberg. But it's the energy cost. That's the reality of things. Even the problems with our money today. It's an accounting system that misallocates to the physical resources out there. You create more units that buy other people's time and energy. If you created those units for free with no energy accounted to it, it's inflation, it's energy theft. But the reason I say it like that is I say things like that to really allow people to explore the idea that money needs to have energy-based properties when you're exchanging it with other energy-based things, which is everything. Your pupusas. That's a whole load very good
explanation. And so let's start with energy. And the energy is the input, and it's amazing how congruent it is with what Dr. Jack Kruse says, that light is fundamental, which is essentially the first form of energy, right? The sunlight is fundamental. In Bitcoin mining, energy is fundamental. How do you break that down for us? Because, there are so many different sources of energy that we can tap into. So please, go ahead and...
So the prime example I can tell you about is, I just went to the hardware store run by Ronnie, and the guy that lives sort of above him, and rental places, and he's getting some more air conditioning units. He's probably seen the hardware store and spoken to Ronnie, and Bitcoin, everything everywhere. And within a few minutes, I was talking to him about, hey, what's your energy bill like? It's really high, Okay. So instead of talking to him about, get this Bitcoin and put it in a wallet, like, to him, that it doesn't solve a problem most immediately. But a high energy bill, a need for electricity, maybe a need for hot water as well in these buildings, that's all served by the energy side of Bitcoin. So the first step is really to teach people about these things. Go from energy, provide free education. But the next step for that is, a lot of Bitcoin education is all digital. And we're in this physical world where half the adults of the world WhatsApp can be a struggle. So learning about technical concepts, new forms of money on a phone or moving it, it's just a headache to them, to the perspective of people here. But if I introduce Bitcoin through, should we get your costs down? Do you need a battery for when the grid's not down, or maybe you're off grid in the mountains or something? Do you need hot water from a computer that can create it excessively because you need to cool the computer down? So it's introducing Bitcoin through through solutions and systems today that they're not thinking about the monetary side of it. They're thinking, I need to solve a problem. And if that results in them going, well, actually, this thing's making money, I need to get a wallet now. And then they're watching this system collect energy from the sun through a computer that drains all the excess that they're not using into their wallet as money that they can go spend in town. All that does is quite simply connect all of the pieces together. Because right now, the only Bitcoin mining that I've seen so far here, that I haven't actually seen it, is at a geothermal plant just outside Berlin. And quite funny, a couple of Bitcoiners, they come to Berlin, into the Bitcoin center, asking to go and visit the Bitcoin mining site. And the point I'm trying to make is, there's so much information about the payment side, but there's a lacking of knowledge and understanding of the energy side of Bitcoin, the fundamental 3 first chapters out of 6, and the very ability to learn about it in person, seeing the very components, the loud computers, which I do say to people, if you go to a Bitcoin mining site, there's something about the physicality of it, the loud whirring machines, something about Bitcoin just clicks about its physicality.
What do you think that is, by the way?
It's physical. We live in a world, and I can say this about myself, I spent half my life growing up out in the physical world, playing on my bike, running around the neighborhood, and then the iPhone came out. Another thing, my father passed away, so I went completely digital, and then from that, just dived into the deep end of just the information aspects of the world, and what that done is it probably didn't help me through education, but finally got to the end of my education, and from that, really seeing this duopoly of like, if you go to a train station right now, just look along the track. Everyone's like this with a screen in their face. And I think coming to El Salvador had this real, I started with having a sort of hate for the internet almost, and not posting as frequently, just like, why am I on this internet thing? And I was sort of fully just sort of completely physical in the way I live and just didn't want to be digital. And now I'm sort of coming back with the pendulum, trying to find my sweet spot now. But I just feel most people are too much on the pendulum of being too digital. It's unhealthy. They're not out in the sunlight, getting that good, healthy sun. All these sorts of things. And so it all comes together with the education of showing the physical side of Bitcoin, supporting efforts to engage kids, to help them learn about Bitcoin, not just all the digital stuff or fiddling around with payments, but okay, we've got these plants, right? They need energy, they need space, and you can't consume them. They need time. It's the perfect analogy for money. So we can do the same thing. Have physical components that they click together. These panels, look at this battery, we're making this kilowatt hour thing. And it comes to something that Elon says, which is not to teach the tools, it's to sort of teach how to solve the problem. It's not, here's a wrench, it's this size, it opens a bolt like this. It's, we've got this engine module, we need to take it apart. We've got this bolt, we need a wrench. And so you're seeing the application of it, not just teaching the tools. You
have the motivation to ask a question. That's really good.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the physical manifestation of, Bitcoin mining in a Bitcoin miner, that representation. Yeah. It's almost like the fact that it's physical, real, and it makes a sound. It looks like a real production process of a Bitcoin, which, we know then it's not making Bitcoin. It's being awarded Bitcoin as a result of that process. But perhaps there is a psychological connection when people see something like that, and it looks like a physical process of manufacturing.
Yeah. But just clicking all the pieces together, the panels, the battery, maybe when it's smaller size, it's more nuanced in what we teach the kids, the electrical components. The crazy thing is, there's a solar miner system with a bit axe that's this big. It's two little panels and it tracks the sun. But you could scale it all the way up to a house, which I want to do here. You could scale it to a hotel, heat all of the water in the rooms. And when your hotel has no guests and it's the middle of the year, really hot and sunny, you've got an occupancy hedge because the mined Bitcoin from your excess energy, if you've got no guests, for example, or is another lockdown, no guests, all your energy is just being drained into your wallet as money.
Sure.
When you're not at your off-grid house with your solar battery setup, if your battery's full, it's a waste. So it includes the aspect of perceiving money as excess energy. Energy is so much in the vocabulary of Bitcoiners. I just want to make it even more tangible, more physical. But then that story of who becomes these new customers, how do we bring about more adoption? Because it's not just looking within. I'm thinking about the 99.9% on the outside of the Bitcoin bubble. That, like I said, I spoke to one guy, he's seen loads of Bitcoin stuff, maybe he has a small amount or something, but I immediately addressed the problem that he has, that he's installing another 3 AC units. That's going to be a couple $100 a month. That's going to be several $1,000s a year. Maybe pay the cost in the first month to get that installed and have no electric bill on month 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 blah. So but again, it's now he needs a wallet because, I've got this thing that's helping my house and it's paying me Bitcoin and I can spend it in town.
It sounds to me like similar to what the Texas grid have done, where they've used Bitcoin mining to build out excess capacity and secure mining electricity generation capacity to secure the grid, right? But in almost the opposite way, where you're using the miners to underwrite the viability of something like that, almost subsidize the implementation of energy generation for this guy in particular. And so, okay, that's a really, easy to see use case. And it's one of those examples that you were talking about, hyper Bitcoinization is kind of like this thing that's sometime in the future and then the benefits will all accrue to us at some unknown date. But this is a problem solved here and now, where we're going to use that energy anyway. This will help us underwrite the expense of running these air conditioners, for example. And then
whether you're on the grid,
my building has a heated pool, right? It's huge. Do you know how many times I've been in that facility and there was another person using the pool? Hardly ever. Right? And so all that energy is being used just in case someone wants to come down and use the pool. That's energy used, but it's effectively like money wasted, right? But
wasted energy,
Bitcoin
money and energy
mining
are now the same thing.
And now we're seeing like, there's a health spa in New York that's actually using Bitcoin mining to heat the water in their pools, for example. And there's no reason why we can't find lots of other instances similar to what you've just said.
Countless here. There's too many.
Are there any other examples that you've come across that you'd like to share?
The easy example for here, because they're everywhere, is the mangoes are going to be dropping now for the next few months everywhere, just rotting on the floor, wasted energy in a human sense. So that is one example. Or the citrus fruit, you could chop them down in slices and the goal will be to dehydrate them. And it's a nominal thing, but the key thing about solar, I wanted to add also, is it's an opportunity for an individual. Your grandma's not going to run a geothermal plant. It's just any other power production option. It's just, they just become too big. Maybe anaerobic digestion, breaking down plant material on your farm where you're growing your mangoes, where you can turn it into biogas and maybe produce some electricity during the night to complement the solar. There's a couple of things, but that's what the discovery period is for me now. I want to either get your advice on this. I want to do not GoFundMe, what do they call it? A geyser fund or something like that to get the student projects. Teach them the components, the mine, and then with them discover different systems that we can make. A key example would be that there's a lot of batteries here, big batteries, grid stability, or the sort of dirty power, the voltage and whatnot can mess up your laptop and whatnot. And so people have a lot of these like batteries. So there is the use of these batteries as an example would be pumps and irrigation on farms. There's a lot of farms here, and they do a lot of pumping of water because it's very mountainous as well. So all it is you run your pump to service your existing energy need for whatever it is. But if you're not pumping, it's really raining or whatnot, and the battery's full, you have that ability to combine it with a computer that can drain that battery into your wallet as money. So you've got this sort of wireless way to transmit energy. And I think Nikola Tesla would enjoy that quite interestingly. But there's a lot of options. There's hotels, the large scale, if anyone from government is listening, or large industry, would be sort of agrivoltaics as one potential option. The flat lands coming from the mountains, but not as close to the ocean. It's just nonstop solar. So you need something where you're not covering the entire greenhouse with all panels, but it's like partial shading. So you grow things underneath that don't need as much sunlight, and you're capturing energy that you may need or don't need. And the scalability for this, to what you alluded to about grid stability, is any effort to what I call hyper-decentralized Bitcoin mining across the entire country as systems that help individuals, is they could participate in the grid, but it's an option. They could... but when they're on their own system, they're off grid. So the only option is to sell the energy that you're not using to the network. But everyone that's on grid, there is a path for all those computers to communicate at that level. The grid's communicating, but if the computers could communicate in the way of allowing grid stability here in El Salvador, that it could be automated that everyone's computers plugging into the grid. If there's a particular moment where there's an insane demand for power and they need something to switch off, you've got a whole, mesh net of computers at that point across El Salvador would be the goal, that can provide that grid stability. That would be the dream. But it's optional. It could be off grid as well, but the cost there would be the batteries.
So I love what you're saying about the scale at which you're trying to develop a prototype or an MVP, particularly as I look around El Zonte, there are a lot of sort of entrepreneurs, stall holders, pupusa stands, and that sort of thing. How do the economics stack up compared to something like that? Does it have the potential to provide an income stream for these families that is sort of on par with having a market stall or a little shop? Like, what's the scale of financial incentive that we're looking at that's possible?
The first step is always boiled down to what's your existing electric bill. So I've visited one place where it's, hundreds of dollars a month on electricity, and they need hot water for guests. So if there's a whole list of criteria ticked off, Bitcoin mining as a system boils down to power, water, and Wi-Fi. So if you have any business that needs a large, excessive amount of any of those three relatively, then Bitcoin mining is a potential option. Off grid, you're paying half the setup cost is going to be batteries. So is it better to be on grid? There's all these other comparisons. You buy an off-grid system and deploy the exact system down by the beach. Maybe the corrosion has an issue. The exact same system up in the mountains may not, it may perform better, it may last longer. So there's all these nuances, but it boils down to, do you have an existing high electric bill? Which here, the grid rate, I've seen 25 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which is almost as bad as England, I would add. And from that, if you are a business that's using a lot of power, the first step is for that electric bill, what you're paying, and the quantity of kilowatt hours. From that, do you need hot water? Do you need to dry things, such as beef jerky is going to be quite an interesting thing. But when it comes to the comparison of paying for this energy system, essentially what you're buying, versus your existing business or paying the electric grid a much higher rate, the cost to install is obviously going to be about sizing. But to answer your question, the comparison to their existing business, it will be nominal. But the key thing that needs to be in everyone's minds when understanding Bitcoin mining is, as much as it's about making money, both physically, financially, and cryptographically, it's about this new age of Bitcoin mining in a decentralized individual way is about cost reduction. That you got this computer that in dollar terms makes you $5, $10, $20 a day. To someone in the West, that's could be considered a rounding error. But here, when in some places, remember this system can be located anywhere when you're just connecting to the sun and the internet. And $12, $20 a day, $5, $10, $20 a day is a couple meals.
Yeah.
It's
a penny saved, right?
Yeah. But it's the cost reduction side. If you bought a system that you're now no longer paying a monthly electric bill, you're measuring not just the Bitcoin you mine, but the cost savings. If you had a hostel or hotel or any business, anyone with a business, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to figure out the numbers to begin with, which is the cost reduction side of all those other things. And when you add those up, plus the Bitcoin mined, that's where you get the payback period, which you're hoping to do in 2 to 4 years. But another important thing, when you're producing your own electricity to mine Bitcoin versus paying an electric bill, which would be like hosted mining, with producing your own power, there's no price of Bitcoin to switch you off. Price crash, doesn't matter. You got excess energy, you're draining it into your wallet. Halving comes, doesn't matter in a sense, because you have a system where you're just monetizing the power you make. You're not paying that bill that when the price gets too low, you have to switch off. And those most crucial times to mine are when the absolute bottom of the bear market, other miners are switching off. And so there's a greater piece of the pie for you to stay online. So you're stacking sats at the most important moments in the fiat price cycle.
Where do we take it from energy?
Well, the energy side's important because I think you could understand that medium of exchange here is where the adoption relative to everywhere else is happening. There's these pockets of medium of exchange. There's a couple of, there's places down here by the beach. There's a few places in the city. And then if you look at any Bitcoin map, go to Berlin, El Salvador, and it's just coated with almost 200 merchants. Now, let's open the palette. Medium of exchange is all well and great. And the reason I mention this from your question of energy is this. The store of value is what the North has the benefit of. Everyone in the North, relative, has most of the Bitcoin. In the West and wealthy, but far few places to spend it. So the North has all the money, but almost nowhere to spend it. And the South has loads of places to spend it, but not as much Bitcoin. So what we really need is a store of value, medium of exchange, and we'll get to the third one as well. There needs to be an alignment between these. And what solar Bitcoin mining offers is to add unit of account and cost reductions. And unit of account of energy, I'll get to that. But the cost reductions are, and it comes back to medium exchange. If someone's paid Bitcoin, but all of their costs are in dollars and the costs are really high, like their electric bills, it's all well and great that we've got them to accept Bitcoin, but they immediately have to go and sell it. That every circular economy has a success for having an ATM. That is the bridge. The bridge isn't functional, not full of cash, unhappy customers. So everything about the next step of medium of exchange success introduces cost reductions, where I believe if people are exploring the Bitcoin mining side to get costs down in their business, they can take Bitcoin as payment and not have to immediately spend it all because their costs are so high. And if we have lower costs and higher Bitcoin revenues, we have a margin of savings. And that's where store of value starts scaling up here. If people can save here in Bitcoin, they see those properties of its long-term value. Because everyone here, they take the Bitcoin, but 99% of them have to sell it.
Yeah.
And so that's 99% leakage of the medium of exchange. So it's how we can help medium of exchange by exploring cost reductions, and that's through producing more energy.
I mean, I should also say that what you've outlined is true, but the ability to transact in Bitcoin is a huge step forward for a great number of people. I think before the Bitcoin policy of President Bukele, there were only 1 million people with bank accounts in this country.
Yeah.
And when they launched, albeit a government-sponsored Bitcoin wallet, I think they had 4 million downloads. So there is a huge demand for the ability to transact. And I think Bitcoin does provide that, but I like where you're sort of pointing towards how we can improve and what else we can do better as well. So there's, I certainly agree with what you've outlined there. Okay, I love it. I love it, to be honest. I think we've got the potential to set up something where people save quite a lot of money for themselves just from the energy that they're already using, and if it's going to pay off as fast as you suggest, then it suddenly becomes a financing exercise, right?
It gets a bit spicy as well, but we'll get to that.
All right. Okay. So where do you want to take it from here? Because one of the things, if this thing works and the economics stack up, right, which, can be verifiable, right? All your inputs can be verified.
Work.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then we have a model that can then be distributed, propagated throughout society. I'm sure you've got a number of different types of models depending on the scenarios that you've outlined. Geography, availability of this or that. And then it's a case of distribution. And so if a key part of that is going to be finance, what are some of the ways that we can enable that? Well, what are some ideas that can enable that?
No debt. None.
Okay.
Debt is a promise, some magical amount of energy to be paid in return. So one of the ways that these sorts of systems can scale in a financial way is if, let's just say you put down a 10% deposit of the Bitcoin cost to buy a full stack solar mining system, all the way from the solar panels to the wallet that you're receiving Bitcoin, right? You put down a 10% deposit because you can't afford the system, but your business or whatever you do is recognized as a highly fruitful, energy-conserving way to make you more money. Well, then the 90% that you didn't pay for, let's say, someone else has fronted the cost for that. The 90% of that's not owned could be paid out as a profit split with the Bitcoin mined. So there's nuances to that, but the premise of that is Bitcoin can finance its own creation in a sense through its expansion of producing more energy.
Okay, but who's fronting up the 90% of that cost?
If I recognize that your hotel with this big giant roof and all these rooms with people that want hot water day and night, because I'm sure you've been into a hotel and spent an hour in the shower because you're not paying the energy bill. So those hotel prices are going to aggregate all those costs that they have to pay. So if that business has recognized that it's a no-brainer that they have a decent occupancy, a lot of energy demand, look at the heating bill, but let's just say they're struggling. They don't have the cash. And that's that gap that debt was supposed to fill. And it's the same here with El Salvador. There's so much land out there, but the finance to actually build and develop and scale on it is very limited. So they may have to sell a chunk over here. But with this system, we can exclude debt from it by having a profit split as one way of doing it. Because think of it like this. Selling Bitcoin to buy a thing that makes more Bitcoin, that can only be a viable proposition for your Bitcoin. And that scales all the way up to, would Bitcoiners fund a new hydropower dam? Yes, because it produces more energy, which can produce more Bitcoin. So it's because every time we plug in more energy and compute into the system, difficulty adjusts up, and that reprices your Bitcoin against a greater amount of energy. And these are the sorts of things I delve into on the YouTube, Hashpower Academy, to really explore the very deep intricacies of how Bitcoin works, But everything of what I'm doing here now in El Salvador is to take it out of the classroom, off the whiteboard, and build them. But the most powerful part of this, for me, would be, everyone's trying to get nodes, wallets, and miners into people's hands. The three functions of read, write, and own. This system is the full stack of all three.
Yeah. I can see a viable business model there for some kind of initiating intermediaries type of organization between Bitcoiners and people who need the Bitcoin mines, for example. How do you think something like that can get off the ground?
It'll be reaching out to me and people getting the complete download of what needs to happen next in relation to these much smaller systems, because it's all the same components that just scale. The quantity of panels, the quantity of miners, and the singularity of your wallet. So scalability is there. It's just getting those first MVPs across the board built.
Yeah.
But a critique of myself, I've been quite a lone wolf for a lot of my life. So I reach out to the world that I need help. I need people that are interested in this stuff, and I need to actively respond to them and participate and collaborate. So it's finding people here that have those problems, because there's probably 100 people out there trying to solve the same problem. I'm not capitalist enough to try and create a solution and keep it private. I want to see these things built. I just want to build. And so
couldn't there be a software solution to that where it's almost like a marketplace but someone's got to implement it. Someone has to take the responsibility to implement a technical solution, right?
Yeah.
So you can outline that, you can put blueprints together, whatever, but someone has to have some level of sort of responsibility and quality control about implementing these things tied to any kind of platform.
Like a utility.
I don't see anything wrong with that. Yeah.
You get your gas boiler. Oh, it broke. Some guy comes to fix it.
Yeah.
We need what coming to El Salvador has taught me as well is hyper Bitcoinization in payments and wallets, or even down to the energy level. All of that is going to come from the most simple, basic, plug and play, push a button, steer the wheel interface. It needs to be as easy as possible to operate for the everyday person. And if it's not, if it's a super technical wallet, just the ears close, the eyes disappear, the app gets deleted. And so I've really, really come to terms with what needs to be built has to be so plug and play, and that's the success of its scale beyond its economics.
Well, there's definitely a lot of people who would look to invest in something like that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Bitcoiners actually being, at least on the timeline, sort of very interested in these sorts of initiatives and to be able to put their Bitcoin to use. It's, yield is a dirty word in Bitcoin for obvious reasons.
It's the only intrinsic yield. It's the natural yield of the network.
And so you're actually helping on a social level. You're generating economic value using Bitcoin. And so return on your Bitcoin using Bitcoin with Bitcoin mining.
If you are a person that wants your own energy to run into your own system, into your own battery, to heat your own greenhouse, to grow your own food and dry it, and land all the excess into your wallet as money and be completely full stack sovereign. If you're a person looking for that sort of system where you can be as disconnected from society as possible, but as connected and contributing to the network as possible, that's the sort of system for you. And that really alludes to a lot of why people are coming to El Salvador, is they see the chaos of other parts of the world. And I don't necessarily think people will buy a system to heat the water in their house and all these other things as a profitable business enterprise. They want it to probably at least hit 1 for 1. They spent a quarter of a Bitcoin on a big system, and they want a quarter back. But it's when you start adding those extra bits, like, I've dried some mangoes, and hang on a minute, a dried packet of mangoes sells for $5, but they're dropping over here for free. And now you can start measuring the time and energy cost to transport it somewhere.
That's a new business suddenly, right?
There's all these new emerging properties. But again, my goal for now is to raise probably quarter of a Bitcoin to do like 5 to 10 or even more student projects, and just let the younger generation do the groundwork and the exciting effort to probably be entrepreneurial in what they build. My effort is to create all the educational material, the framework, the blueprint, get the first things built. But it's all about passing the torch in my eyes, because it'll be the student that, you know, goes to their family farm and goes, look, like, I've been working on this system, and we can you know, whatever it is, dry, all these different examples of what it could do. Another one is drying wood. When you kiln dry wood, you raise its value 30% or so. In a country that's construction like mad, you need construction materials. So it's really about people learning these new systems and seeing out there in their country, their society, what's changing, what's happening, what do people need, providing those services but with cheaper input costs, because energy's everything.
So there are companies that help people get a return on their Bitcoin yield, essentially, using the Lightning Network, right?
Routing, yeah.
And so, you know, why are you reluctant to set up a company that gives a return on their Bitcoin, a yield, a commercial return, doing a commercial activity using Bitcoin mining? Why are you reluctant to do that?
Not reluctant to do it.
You sound reluctant.
I've been working on the financialization of Bitcoin mining for 3 to 4 years. And from that, there's a few dangerous things in that I won't talk about on camera. But the other side of that is understanding the very issuance power of the network. I mean, Coinbase right now just launched hash rate financing. It's people are now slowly beginning to recognize the financial properties of the compute in Bitcoin. And that will be in contracts and bonds and all these other things. I hear the word Bitcoin bond and I see $1 involved. It's not. A Bitcoin bond is a promise of future delivery of Bitcoin, potentially in a greater amount. There's only one system that does that, and that's projecting more energy into the network, Bitcoin mining, and seeking a return by being more efficient than the average of the whole group in mining. That's the way to earn a yield on Bitcoin. Be better than the rest of the network. And that's how Bitcoin as a system redistributes the Bitcoin. Consumers are paying fees for storing data, and all the excess is being reallocated to those efficient at building out infrastructure for society.
Start the company. Start the company, raise the funds, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, this is encouragement. It's not criticism, right? So like, okay, you've got a good idea here. There's nothing to be coy or shy about in terms of wanting to start a commercial enterprise, given that you've got an idea that can help. It helps everyone, right? It helps the investor. It helps the proprietor who is going to redirect the excess energy that they're going to accumulate. And you're helping everybody all around. So it's like, I think that's a noble thing to base a business around. And I think you shouldn't have any qualms about the potential to build a commercial enterprise around that and have proprietorship over the idea. And, you know, it's going to take a lot of work to do that. It's not like building an app that millions of people just download and you can scale without so much effort. But it's work, and you should benefit from that too.
Yeah.
That's capitalism, right?
Yeah. Just adding value. But I think what took me quite a few years was speaking to investor types where they want to know money in, function of creating money, money out, and then risk aspect of all that process.
Yeah. But if you deal with Bitcoin investors, that's a very different breed.
Yeah.
I mean, they still want a ballpark around that, but the purpose matters so much more to Bitcoin investors. And there's a lot of money in the ecosystem. There are a lot of people who are investors, you know, who have made their wealth through Bitcoin, who will be more receptive to the story in addition to the financial outcome. So not kind of like a feel-good story to tell people, but really all you care about finances. They really do care about the mission. Yeah. So I think, I don't know who you've approached previously, but my experience talking to people in this space is that they really do care about the mission. Yeah. Truly.
I want to see kids building crazy cool technical things, and then how they integrate any kid anywhere, but how they integrate these systems into their everyday life. So Bitcoin becomes that omnipresent money that's just the money we always had relative to that group growing up.
And there are a lot of smart kids graduating from the Cubo Plus education program to learn to code in Bitcoin, for example. So there is definitely a talent pool to draw from to develop a local industry around the types of solutions that you're talking about.
There's the storyline of not just teaching this, not just textbook teaching, but I want to be able to take students to the farm, learn about how they grow food alongside how the money is produced, energy, space, and time. And beyond that, it's going, well, we're going to need people to do generic maintenance, cleaning of panels, learning about the electrical side, maybe restarting machines, the lower levels of repair, because everything of education creates inspiration, or the other way around is what I see. I want to inspire kids, and then the education comes easy. They're at the door of the classroom before the time is even time to start. But what happens next is we want it to transpire into jobs. That's really the next step. So having locals that learn about these global technological changes and how El Salvador is being part of that, but how those technologies fall into their hands, how they learn about it, and how they build systems and solutions to solve everyday people's problems here. The goal for me is teach, scale it, expand it, but be able to step out and go to a more scalable platform level of things. But the story really starts with present day Berlin and how we got there, and then really seeing what comes next, which will be incredibly exciting for the circular economy subject.
All right, we've got the energy, right?
Yeah.
Energy component, business model for an MVP, right?
Yeah.
It's the outline of it is there. And so where do we take this from here? Like you mentioned before, a high level overview of your education program.
Yeah.
Right. And so we were just talking about the coffee farm before. What else is there? Like, because the financialization of Bitcoin and the financial aspect, number go up and potential, benefits as a store of value. And the Bitcoin community talks about that ad nauseum, right?
Yeah.
So like, what do we need to cover between where we are now and we get to that module of your education platform?
The timeline of things, I would say, and we can take Berlin, the mountain town adopting Bitcoin as payment, is there's a couple of businesses that I've noticed, like a hostel, which they have the wave of Bitcoiners and other people come and stay. But they've also got a roof that just is tilted quite conveniently to the south, and two massive, they call rotoplas, the big tanks of water. And so I'm just constantly noticing where these, low occupancy hostel, big tanks of water and a giant roof, where they're a prime example. They could have a system. But the real first step is to show the most basic version of all the different components. Basic version. This is why it starts with the student projects. But with the farm in Berlin, I have the ability to scale probably a system to about 200 kilowatts. And that's a big system. It's a big system. The other benefits from the government level is they've made, I think it's imports of renewables, i.e. solar and wind turbines, but solar panels, no import taxes. So there is an incentive to bring energy production here. We're in January. January and December are the darkest months of the year, and it's an 11.5-hour day of sun. Now, the other nuances are, there's the rain season, there's big gaps where there's just clouds and whatnot. But you're getting nominal amounts of power. But the story of Berlin is that we're at 200, shall we say, merchants that take Bitcoin as payment. A lot of that's being sold. And where the solar mining comes in is with that first system being set up, that will provide an additive of a place to visit. The goal will be to have more cabins and stuff like that. So not just a Bitcoin mining site like the hundreds of Bitcoin mining sites, which is just an infrastructure site in the middle of nowhere. It's very anti-human. And I say that because there's a struggle for miners where they've got a site in the absolute middle of nowhere or the hottest part of the desert somewhere in other places. It's, where it's windy, really bright, really wet is where you'll find cheap energy. So this is more shifting mining to a more human side, which is being part of agricultural systems, businesses, homes, pools. I'm sure someone will reach out wanting to do like a retreat in the mountains and have it all heated with Bitcoin. Those big scale projects are really going to start with just all of the pain points of import, the pain points of how it gets there, finding the guys locally that want to do installations. The nuances between, you've got this electric system that you may want to connect to a water system. Plumber doesn't want to touch the power, and the electrician doesn't want to touch the water. So it's just ironing out all of the kinks, and then the scale is obnoxious.
I like the idea of drying fruit, particularly mango, which is very popular amongst people who are visiting fruit
Coconut
samples.
as well, yeah.
Coconut as
There's
well.
a big list.
And potentially like branding some kind of operation as the Bitcoin farm, right?
Yeah.
And selling products, because the point about selling products is there'll be a huge amount of demand from international Bitcoiners to order, the dried mango dried with Bitcoin mining.
I've got the name. I'm not going to say it yet.
Right.
But
yeah.
But
so these sorts of things, I think, you could really capitalize on as a marketing push, and then the curiosity perhaps will lead people to ask, how was it done? It could even be a point for people to come and visit when they're in El Zonte.
Well, they've got the farmers market today, and we want this collaboration because I mentioned there's another group doing a coffee farm, loads of Bitcoiners. They've got all manner of different things happening, but they're producing goods, right? And so the story of medium of exchange gets really exciting next, because not just the Bitcoin mining stuff, but how it ties in with medium of exchange is the different people producing things that may be relative to Bitcoin. We want to connect what we produce the goal is to get, say, regular shipments of, the goal will be organic produce down to the coastal regions where there's Bitcoiners that want to know that they're buying healthy, well-produced goods, and they want to pay it in if they're paying it in Bitcoin, helping Bitcoiners grow food, it all scales. And another interesting one is on the farm. The farmer that I'm very acquainted to, he used to have thousands and thousands of chickens. But the electric price is too high to keep the chicks warm during the incubation phase and the food as well. But the goal for the farm would be, we want to start with building a few cabins with the view out to the mountains. There's no buildings in front, just rolling trees. Cabins bring customers. Customers want to eat healthy things. The other nuance about eggs and why we want to use Bitcoin mining to do egg incubation, which is lovely, is to change the chicken, change what they eat and everything else to organic. The other reason for that is there's these markets around El Salvador which subsidize the price of certain things, eggs being one of them. So it's not economically viable in finance or energy physics for the farmer to scale up. He has all the infrastructure sitting there. And I've seen this example after example of there's either a money problem or an energy problem related to why there's not a productive business scaled up with all the infrastructure sat there. And so it's this, okay, well, I've got these systems that can produce energy and create heat. So now we're going to explore doing egg incubation with the Bitcoin mining heat as an off-take, not cooking them. And raise chickens. Cabins with customers eating organic produce, the goal will be to have all that sort of food waste be fed to the chickens. So it's not just seeing circular economies with Bitcoin in the context of finance, but it's seeing circular economy of the goods and services, how they're recycled. And the other side of medium of exchange is not just money moving around in the opposite direction of goods and services, but how energy and money interplay, which is what Bitcoin mining is. Yeah. So it's adding to the circular economy not just with the money, but also the goods. And that cross-correlation of a productive town growing things and trying to price it in Bitcoin, that's how we expand the medium of exchange beyond a town. Because of what I've noticed is, even if we adopted the entire town, right, everyone's taking payment as Bitcoin, they've got to go resupply. So any good or service that needs to be resupplied, the costs of those merchants outside of the town, that's the limit. So the limit of the town's adoption for medium of exchange Bitcoin is their costs. And this is where I focus heavily on unit of account economics of how we measure costs and quantities of Bitcoin. And it really boils down to, if I give your house next door a kilowatt hour of electricity by switching my computer down by using less energy, I've missed out on some Bitcoin mined because I'm using less energy, making less hash power, earning less Bitcoin. So it boils down to the 117 Satoshis that I missed out for not mining for 1 kilowatt in an hour. That's the price of the energy I'm going to charge you. Now, when you price energy in Bitcoin and electricity in Bitcoin, you can go up the chain to go, well, hang on, now I can measure the cost to charge my car, because the car being charged is now that computer missing out on a quantity of Bitcoin mined. So it's unit of account through energy, which prices costs in Bitcoin, which will allow the medium of exchange of a town to expand beyond the town. And we expand it through the supply chains.
Yeah.
And we measure that in energy, not money.
Don't you think that people are still reluctant to do that, though, given, the whole world is priced in US dollars, essentially?
Yeah.
And Bitcoin, I don't want to revive a silly meme of FUD, but, the volatility is still an aspect in that regard. So don't you see that being an impediment to Bitcoin in this moment becoming a unit of account?
I can politely say that's a very fiat-minded way of seeing it.
It is, but the world is fiat-minded, right?
No. What I'm saying is that the very cost, if the computer's earning 100 sats per kilowatt that it uses, and it scales down to give you power, and you pay 100 sats instead, it doesn't matter if that's computers on or off. But the pricing of that has nothing to do with dollars. That is how much the 450 Bitcoin a day, the 144 blocks, priced against, say, all the energy that's used today. And we can only recognize how much energy is out there in the system by how many blocks are mined. So it boils down to block rewards are priced against your miner's efficiency. Those two toggles create what I call Bitcoin per kilowatt hour. And I'll just explain the easy example is saying I switch it off, relative cost 100 sats. But in the educational material, you can have the long explanation of how that's calculated. But that has nothing to do with the dollar. That is a completely other separate, that's the price. I'm talking about the production cost underneath the price. And everything has that way. You're essentially measuring against the value of Bitcoin, the energy value of Bitcoin.
Against energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bitcoin's the currency, but you're measuring it against energy, which ultimately still has a US dollar price, right? So I understand what you're saying, but it's still the mindset everybody has, you see, because they still operate in a US dollar world, in a US dollar economy, right? And so no matter, most of these people are not.
But do they have to? And the reason I say that is, for example, if anyone visits Berlin, which I 100% recommend you do, the cost to charge the car can be measured in a quantity of Bitcoin. The cost. So if they start having, and this is the other thing, the grid's charging 25 cents. If I dollarize the Bitcoin amount, it's probably about 8 to 9 cents.
Yeah. So
firstly, the Bitcoin system and that place to charge is offering a lower price. And if a person starts, say, let's just say electric tuk-tuk, because this is what I want to do in Berlin, is they've got these loud little motor taxis, the little three-wheelers. I want to do an electric one where it's charging using a solar system and no noise. They're quite loud, so have an electric one. You can get them really cheap. It was $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, depending. And from that, you've now got a vehicle that its cost to charge can be directly measured through physics in a quantity of sats. So what do they want to take as money? If the cheapest place to charge up, to fill the car, the cheapest place you have to pay in Bitcoin, right? Now they want Bitcoin for their goods and services because their place to resupply with their costs is in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole effort that needs to come next, to get our costs in Bitcoin, because then we can set free market prices in Bitcoin.
Sure. I mean, yeah, if you're generating energy independent of the grid, you're able to do that because you're saying it's untouched by the fiat world, right? Now, I have engaged certain people on a contract basis, to provide some services. And, they'll send me an invoice in Bitcoin. But, if a few days have passed, let's say I'm on holidays, I didn't get around to paying it, they will reprice that. Because of the fluctuation in Bitcoin, and these are Bitcoiners.
So
right?
dollar unit of account.
Well, we say
that's the whole thing about, we need to get unit of account, because I see it as the store of value is the sort of foundations, and unit of account is the sort of suspension, and the bridge of trade is the medium of exchange side. And if we're still accepting Bitcoin as payment for a $3 cost, we're not, unit of account can only come from how we can measure things in a quantity of sats. Mm-hmm. We can measure fees. That's the first thing measured in Bitcoin is fees, the fee market, sats per virtual byte. The other fundamental one is sats per kilowatt hour. And the third one, which comes to price the microchip supply chain, is how energy is priced against compute.
Yeah.
And so energy, compute, and information are the three core commodities in Bitcoin. And to get costs measured in a unit of account, we can achieve that in isolated pockets. But again, to what you've alluded to, we're competing against the masses of unit of account of an existing system.
I know, but like a lot of people who are generating energy through solar and have the option to feed the excess into the grid, for example. So while technically what you say is true, that we can operate in this example independent of the fiat world and set a price of energy in sats, and that could be a constant, for example, a lot of people will have the option to feed that back into the grid, and as a result have an opportunity cost in dollars. Like it's almost like, it's what I'm trying to impress upon you is, in my estimation, my guess is they pay less.
I'll give you an example. In Mexico, they have what's called net metering. You've got solar in your house.
Right.
You produce a load of power, they're net metering going, okay, you've produced an excess.
Yeah.
But if your bill comes, they don't give you the 100 kilowatts. When your bill comes, they cut it in half.
Right.
They'll give you 50%. So they steal half your energy, to put it politely.
They are doing something similar in other jurisdictions as well, where they almost you are not allowed to sell at the market rate, and you are bound by law to feed it back into the grid as well.
Yeah, you have to. There's a lot of countries, but notice that. Why would you have to use the government grid by law? Isn't that a bit? So what I've noticed, and if I ever disappear, you probably know why, is they control us through energy, not money. Money is a number, an accounting system, a database to measure the real world. And the more that accounting system aligns to the physical reality of what actually happens in this world, that's the best form of money. But we don't. We have a fiat system that perversely creates more numbers to buy more physical real world things that a farmer had to wait months and risk growing to be screwed over for the market prices, or the other way around, the commodity prices right now. They control us through energy. And if Bitcoin gives you a financial opt-out, it would be any form of energy system that provides more sovereignty to you. It allows you to opt out from an energy side as well. But it comes down to, if a system offers you the same energy, but at half or 1/3 of the price, you should explore that. Because I always tell people, or I ask it as a question, would you be happy with your salary, as it is now, whatever it is, if your costs were cut in half? it's a layman's example, but the exercise is to not just think about making more money to have more wealth, but actually acknowledging that all the costs and the subscriptions that suck it all away, whether it's the government and their taxes or the grid and the mandates that you're forced to have your costs with them. No, it's Bitcoin gives you an energy opt-out and a financial opt-out. And the compute in the middle sets the price. And if we have energy priced against Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin's trying to price all goods and services that cost energy to create and transform, we now have a standardized accounting system where unit of account of information energy money is aligned to the actual physical world of what energy is available on the grid. What's not available is the hash rate coming offline. So we have all these moving parts to Bitcoin, but there's the big picture, technical stuff, and then there's the small picture, little everyday system. But it all connects, and that's the exciting part.
Man, that's a wonderful point. I don't want to leave it on that point because I want to give you the opportunity, just in case we've missed anything that you've mentioned, because I think that ties it up really nicely. But I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything that you would really like to mention that we haven't quite covered just yet?
So the financialization of hash rate, which would be particularly interesting to people trying to figure out Bitcoin banking and all these sorts of things. So I've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, money to really figure out what's possible, how it's possible. Because when you start contending with hash power in a financial way, you have to learn the energy side. You have to learn the technical and cryptographic side. You have to learn the financial side. That's the only way to understand it. But when we start thinking about how do we make a Bitcoin bond market? Because the fiat, borrowing fiat to buy Bitcoin, I don't see as a bond. So what I want to say is if there's anyone particularly interested and seriously considering creating any form of business that explores the financialization, whether it's like a land bank here in El Salvador or a bank looking to help scale these sorts of systems out, such as solar energy systems. Because if there's a particular business, it would be a profitable enterprise to find and survey loads of different businesses here, which they become no-brainer examples of a highly successful deployment of one of these systems. I'll give you the best example, a lavanderia. You need hot water, you need electricity, and people all sit there on the Wi-Fi. So the perfect example would be to do a scalable business of a lavanderia.
What is that?
Laundry. So washing machines and dryers. You need hot water and hot air. So it's fill the roof with solar, have a tank of water preheat. So any of these sorts of businesses that can integrate existing businesses with existing costs, and how Bitcoin can take those costs away, plus add some Bitcoin mined. There's probably a million people out there with that same business. Showcase the single business example where it's possible, and everyone else that sees that content that has the same criteria. I've got the same amount of washing machines, the same business, the same everything, and then replicate. And what this does is, there's an interesting book with hash rate heating, that if 1% of global energy heating demand was provided by Bitcoin miners, it would add another 1,000 exahash to the network. It would double the network hash rate today, which would mean the public miners on the grid, in layman's terms, their profitability would collapse. In fact, half of them would go out of business. So centralized data center mining is under threat by decentralized individuals that can make more profitable economics out of a single computer than them buying two at half the price, making more Bitcoin, but just because they're physically constrained.
And that's better for the network anyway, right?
So we can hyper decentralize the entire network, putting nodes, wallets, miners in every home through a system where people understand it is solving their problems. You can't ask, and then we put Bitcoin on their hands. You just can't ask for a better way of solving problems today, but securing their tomorrow.
Yeah. So if you're an educator and you want to collaborate with Jake on his education stuff, if you're an analyst and you want to help run some numbers or test some scenarios or whatever, he's done a lot of work in that space. If you're an investor and you want to explore how something like this can be scaled up, any kind of interest, where can they find you?
On Twitter.
Yep, Twitter first.
Don't want to call it X. Yeah. Jake Scanlon, my name. Hashpower Academy. So Hashpower Academy in short. That's the main two, but across all the socials typically.
Hashpower Academy that's your website, is it?
Hashpower, that is the name and also the website. Hashpower.academy is the website.
And your YouTube is called?
Hashpower Academy.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jake, thank you very much. It's been a fascinating chat and really exciting to see something like this. And I hope it can take off. I think some form of it will eventually take off. It might as well be you.
The goal is to also find other people with the passion to do this sort of stuff that want to go out and find the best places, the best projects. But the scale is there, and it can start as small as a bit axe and 2 little panels and a small battery, or it could be as big as what Elon alludes to power an entire country.
Incredible, man. Thanks again.
Till next time. Thank you.